Hi guys, it's Alex. Today I'll talk with a legendary person, Dr. Aubrey about anti-aging technologies. Millions of people around the globe know him very well, but for people who aren't familiar with him, I'd like to make a brief introduction. Aubrey is a biomedical gerontologist, former co-founder of the Science Research Foundation and chief science officer. He is editor-in-chief of the academic journal Rejuvenation Research, author of the mitochondrial pre-radical theory of aging, and co-author of The Ending Aging. He is well known for his view that medical technologies may enable human beings alive today not to die from related causes. Also, Aubrey, a mathematician who's contributed to the study of the Heinrich Nelson problem. He is a fellow of the Gerontological Society of America, the American Aging Association, and Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies. Also, Aubrey founded a brand new foundation, LEV Foundation, Longevity Escape Velocity. You'll be able to find the link on his website below the video in the description section. And now I'll talk with Aubrey. Hi, Aubrey. I'm so happy to see you again and to have you on my show.
Thank you for having me.
Aubrey, please tell me about your brand new foundation, LEV Foundation, Longevity Escape Velocity. And I've heard you develop 4 anti-aging products. So fascinating. Please tell me about that.
Okay, so first of all, I call it LEV Foundation. Not LEV Foundation. Oh. Okay, so yes,
okay.
I know it's not obvious, so I keep telling everybody that. So, of course, we do not have products. We are a non-profit. We do research, just the same as my previous foundations. So, what you're referring to is a huge mouse lifespan experiment that we have just begun a couple of months ago in one of the spin-outs from my previous foundation. So the company is called iCore Life Sciences, and they do several things, but in particular they are a CRO, a contract research organization. That's one of the things they do. And they are the best people in the world to do an experiment like this. So it's the most ambitious and audacious experiment of its kind that's ever been done. We have 1,000 mice. Sure. We have 1,000 mice, and we are giving them combinations of 4 different interventions, different treatments. We are starting the experiment when the mice are already 19 months old, which is like 2/3 of the way or 60% of the way through their normal lifespan. And, of course, we are interested to know how much we can extend that lifespan. Additionally, we are looking at lots and lots of health indications, visual ones, behavioral ones, physiological ones, everything that people normally do in an experiment like this. So the things we're doing...
yeah, Aubrey,
just let me briefly finish. So the...
okay, sure.
So the things we're doing are, one of the treatments is rapamycin, which is well known to be a calorie restriction mimetic. Second one is telomerase gene therapy, adding telomerase. The third one is a senolytic, a drug that kills off senescent cells. And the fourth one is heterochronic bone marrow. So, in other words, giving these mice the hematopoietic stem cells from young mice. We are doing them in 10 different combinations, and we are just starting now. So I won't say any more about that for the moment. I have written a lot about it on our website, levf.org, and also on social media.
So interesting. Aubrey, in the year 2016, Shinya Yamanako became a Nobel Prize winner for reversing cells, reprogramming cells. Some people even compare it with reversing time. Aubrey, why this miracle technology still didn't apply in a wide medical practice?
Well, you have to remember that the discovery of induced pluripotent stem cells was not as much of a surprise as it looked, because
Mm-hmm.
in the early embryo, exactly the same thing is done. You have two genomes, one from the sperm and one from the unfertilized egg, and they are very
Mm-hmm.
specialized. They do particular things. And those two genomes both need to be wiped clean, so to speak, epigenetically. They need to be turned into a single, diploid genome that will develop into the new organism. So what Yamanaka was able to discover was the master control genes that make that happen. And that's great, but it's got nothing to do with aging. Not directly, anyway. In aging, we have the accumulation of many types of damage. Now, one of those types of damage is that we have fewer stem cells. And, um, and the stem cells that we do have are not so stem-like. And what the Yamanaka factors can potentially do is reverse that, to make some of our cells a little more stem-like so that they behave more youthfully and give us better regeneration. But there are two limitations to that when we look at aging. One of them is that there are many other aspects of aging that do not have to do with stemness. And the other is that the same factors may have side effects. In particular, they may promote cancer. And so we have to be very, very careful in monitoring what happens. And of course, that is why the process of research in this area is still so long.
Aubrey, some statistic data show that because of COVID-19, population of our planet became older. Is it true that COVID-19 accelerated and accelerates aging?
Well, I'm not an expert on COVID-19, and of course, we do know that
Mhm.
it affects different people very differently. So I think it is too soon to make generalizations that are that simple. However, what we can certainly say is that COVID-19 is coming under control. That, there are not many cases anymore compared to how many there were, and that will continue. So I believe that even if COVID-19 has had an accelerating effect on some people's aging, that we will not really see it at the population level for very long.
Mhm. Aubrey, is there limitation of lifespan elongation for human beings?
I do not believe that there is any limit to how much we can
Mhm.
extend healthy lifespan and therefore total lifespan using medicine. There is
Mhm.
a lot of discussion about whether there is a limit to human lifespan today when we do not have the kinds of medicine, the kinds of rejuvenation technologies that we will certainly need in order to keep people healthy. But I don't care about that. That's irrelevant. What matters is what can be developed in the future, ideally in the near future, and I believe that there's absolutely no limit.
Uh, what's the connection between temperature of our body and and lifespan and aging? Aubrey, I've heard that if to cool down our organism at least on 1 degree, it can give us additionally several decades. So, what's the connection between aging, longevity, lifespan, and temperature?
So I have absolutely no idea how one could decide that we would get several decades of extra life from 1 degree of reduction in temperature. That sounds completely wrong to me. I have never seen such
Mhm.
a calculation. However, qualitatively, we certainly know that chemical reactions in the body tend to go more slowly at lower temperatures. And so we would expect that there will be a small increase in lifespan from lower temperatures. We see, for example, that in types of animal that hibernate. Sometimes you have two closely related species, one of them hibernates and one of them doesn't, and there is a correlation with lifespan. The one that hibernates tends to live longer, but not all that much longer, and it's a relatively modest correlation. Um,
Mhm.
we honestly don't know, but we can certainly say that mechanistically it's not a surprise because in warm-blooded animals like mammals or birds, there is a lot of energy spent, a lot of nutrients are spent keeping the organism warm, and
Mhm.
uh, that's done using the mitochondria, which of course create toxins. They create free radicals which do damage. So if you are at a lower temperature and you are burning less energy to keep warm, you would expect to make fewer free radicals, and that would be good.
Aubrey, is the technology of defrosting of dead people?
Not yet, but we would certainly, I certainly believe that we are getting much closer to being able to reversibly cryopreserve not just people, but of course solid organs like hearts or kidneys or whatever. That's
Mhm.
the organ cryopreservation will certainly come first. The difficulty at the moment is that a lot of damage is done in the process of cryopreservation, and in order to make the organ or the person function when you warm them up again, you have to fix that damage as well as any damage that was already present. But one of the things that we are supporting, we're funding from my new foundation, LEV Foundation, is a wonderful company named Kynice, which is working on what I believe to be the most promising technology to reduce the amount of damage that is done during cryopreservation. It works by pumping cold helium through the blood system, through the vasculature, which makes cooling much faster, means you need much less cryoprotectant, and it also stops the organ or the brain or whatever from cracking, from fracturing.
Aubrey, many companies clone already animals. Is it possible with human beings? And in your perspective, somewhere and someone in the legal lab grows already him or herself?
I do not know whether anybody has actually done that. I don't think it's all that far away from being possible, because certainly
Mhm.
it's been done in non-human primates. However, the value of it is very doubtful to me. We have, it's not you if you have a twin that was born later, which is what a clone is. Um, of course, there may be value in having organs from a clone that are immunologically identical to you, so as to prevent any immune rejection if you need a transplant. But of
Mhm.
course, we can grow individual organs. In theory, we can grow individual organs in the laboratory from your own cells using IPS technology that you already mentioned, and that technology is quite close now. People are getting there. So I don't think there's really any value in the idea of an actual clone.
Aubrey, is it possible to save stem cells, for example, my own stem cells, and in many years to inject them for my own rejuvenation?
Certainly, this is possible. And people are doing this. People, for example, store umbilical cord stem cells from their babies. But
Mhm.
I believe that the main value of this is for the unusual situation where the baby suffers some problem very soon, in the first couple of years of life, maybe. Um, because then, we have to do what we can with the technology we have. Whereas in aging, we don't have that situation. In aging, by definition, we don't suffer health problems from aging until we're 50 years old or more, right? And that's a very long time in medical technology. So I believe that it doesn't really make sense to store umbilical cord cells um, in the expectation that they will be useful 50 years from now. We will have other ways to do things by then. Now, of course, we could also say, well, okay, if you're 25 or something now, maybe, it's not so long before we need your stem cells to do stuff. But the other thing we have to remember is that even older people do have stem cells that are useful. It's just they don't have so many of them. So we are getting better and better at expanding those cells in the laboratory so that, again, we didn't need to have stored them decades ago.
To rejuvenate person can be used and be effective transplantation of bone marrow stem cells from young donor to old person.
Well, that is one of the 4 interventions that we are doing in our flagship project that I mentioned earlier. And
Yeah.
the reason we're doing it is because people have tried it already and it worked in mice. It gave significant extension of mean and maximum lifespan. In fact, that's true for all 4 of the interventions that we are combining in our project. Each of them individually has shown some benefit to older animals. That's certainly one of them, and we're hoping, of course, that the putting them all together will achieve a bigger benefit.
Aubrey, why in our days no one doesn't conduct vast clinical researches and trials on the category of the people who reached 80 years old and over? Is it because they can have 5, 8 or more diseases simultaneously?
That's the main reason, actually, yes, is that when somebody is already in a very impaired state, usually there are lots of things wrong with them. So they may, when they may die of one particular thing, but they die with a whole bunch of other things. And that's very, very hard to treat at the moment. But I believe that in the end, we will be able to treat people who are already quite sick. The rejuvenation technologies that I have focused my life on, my career on, are probably best applied when someone is not yet sick. In other words, when they are in middle age. But as we get better and better at those things, we will be able to combine them with geriatric treatments for the actual pathologies that people have later on, and we will be able to bring people back to youthfulness from a more and more biologically old state.
Aubrey, why in the world more grandmas than grandpas? And what should women do that men live longer?
So, yes, I mean, of course, the difference between men and women is not all that big. So I have not focused on it all that much over the years. But for sure,
Okay.
it's still a mystery. There is still a lot of work going on trying to understand this. And in fact, I just saw a talk yesterday at a brilliant symposium. This talk was about this question, and there was some fantastic data showing that women benefit from having 2 X chromosomes, and especially that women have 1 X chromosome from their father, whereas men only get their X chromosome from the mother, and the father's X chromosome seems to be more beneficial, especially for brain aging. So this is very exciting data that I didn't know about before, and I will be looking into it more.
So it's my next question about that, about X chromosomes. So 2 X chromosomes of women compare with XY chromosomes of men. Does this difference allow women to live for longer? Yeah.
Well, excuse me. Yes, it seems that way. So, of course, it could be because the Y chromosome is bad for you, right? But it seems that that's not the case. It seems that the Y chromosome is harmless, even though the Y chromosome is the thing that determines whether we have ovaries or testes, whether we are anatomically male or female. It seems that that's not really the main thing in the longevity difference or the rate of aging or anything. The main thing is the number of X chromosomes. Now that's pretty strange, because early in embryonic development, in each cell in our body, one of the X chromosomes is turned off. The process is called X inactivation. The thing is, though, that's random. So after that, throughout the rest of our lives, some of our cells have the X chromosome from the mother turned on and the other one off, and some of them have the X chromosome from the father turned on and the other one off. And and it seems that the X chromosome from the father is better for you. So especially in the brain. But there's a lot more work that needs to be done to understand that better.
Aubrey, pregnancy helps women to change their hormonal status, and does it allow them to elongate their lifespan?
I don't have much expertise on that particular question. However, we can say that in general there is a negative correlation between how many children you have had as a woman and how long you live. The women who live the longest are the women who have not had very many children, if any. But that's a rather weak correlation.
Okay. Aubrey, are children's diseases depend on age and aging?
There is actually a lot of overlap mechanistically between many childhood diseases and the pathologies of late life. And that's really handy, that's really useful, because it means that if you are working on some new technology to address some problem in aging, some aspect of aging, then you will very often be able to find a childhood disease or an early onset disease which is caused by the same mechanism, just going much faster than it does in the rest of us. And that means you can get it through clinical trials and get it approved by the FDA and so on, and then you can move to using it for the rest of the population at an older age. So many companies are doing exactly that.
Aubrey, our reproduction system aging faster than whole organism. How can we fix this source point of aging?
Well, I don't know if I really agree that our reproductive system ages faster than the rest of the organism. I mean,
Okay.
in men, men can be fertile at an old age, right? Women, it's different, but it's different for strange reasons. Menopause is something that excuse me, menopause is something that most species don't have, right? So
Yeah.
so that's a little bit of an exception. And if we think about the ultimate outcome of the reproductive system, namely reproduction, then we actually see the opposite, that the cells that give rise to eggs and sperm are better protected than most of our cells. They accumulate damage more slowly.
Aubrey, I've heard about creation and development of artificial chromosome. It can be a revolution in the anti-aging therapy, and I assume in the treatment of rare genetic diseases. Could you tell me more about artificial chromosome?
Okay, so artificial chromosomes are one way of delivering a lot of new genetic material to cells. And you're quite right, there is some very interesting research going on in that area. But at this point, we don't know whether that's the best way to do this. For example, there are viruses like cytomegalovirus, which are also really good at infecting cells and even replicating so that they can be in cells and they don't get diluted out. And they are big. Cytomegalovirus is a big virus. So you can deliver quite a few genes just like that. Now, it's not nearly as big as an artificial chromosome could be. So if we end up needing to deliver a lot more, then that may be a reason to go in the direction of artificial chromosomes. But at this point, we don't really know which technology they're going to be most appropriate.
Aubrey, philosophical and practical question. Your first foundation's name was Mafusail, and this person from Holy Bible. When, as we know from Holy Bible, when God created first people, they lived roughly 1,000 years. Uh, is it because when God created first human beings, they didn't have so many mutations in their DNA, RNA, genome, and they didn't accumulated these mutations like we modern human beings. So that's why they lived much longer than we.
Well, of course, some people would say that actually the numbers, the ages reported in the Bible are incorrect. Um, and I don't really mind, I don't really care whether they are correct or incorrect, because I'm not trying to study people who died a very long time ago. I'm trying to improve the healthy lifespan and the total lifespan of people who are alive now. And so it doesn't really matter to me whether people used to live a lot longer.
Okay. Aubrey, financial question, what is always crucial. In nowadays, investors in the anti-aging technologies have more requirements and wanna have more evidence than 10, 15 years ago. And let me say, to get $1 million from Peter Thiel, easier or harder when you got it?
Well, Peter was the real pioneer. He was the first person to put a substantial amount of money, $3.5 million, into longevity research philanthropically. And, it made a huge difference to the rate at which I was able to get stuff done. It took, there was one other donor who gave maybe a quarter of that amount 4 years later, and then it took another 6 years before the next person came along who was giving that kind of amount. Now it's really taken off. There's far more money coming in, both philanthropically and commercially, from investors. So a lot of stuff is getting done. But I have to say that at the moment, it is still very unevenly distributed. Especially the commercial money from investors is inevitably going to the easiest technologies, the parts of aging and rejuvenation technologies that are closest to being clinically approved. Uh, and there are other things that are a lot harder, that are still at an earlier stage, a pre-investable stage, and they still rely on philanthropy. On the philanthropic side, even there, some things are easier to fund than others. So I am still having to work very hard to educate wealthy people as well as less wealthy people, and to bring in enough money to get this work done at the speed that it could be done.
Aubrey, and you donated millions of dollars, your own money, in some gerontological researches, isn't it?
That's correct, yes. My mother died in 2011, 12 years ago, and she left me quite a lot of money, and I gave, I think, 78% of it to Sense Research Foundation. And that was very timely, because it was just around the time when there was quite a lot that needed to be done. We decided to spend it over a period of 5 years, so basically 2012 through to 2016, and that basically allowed us to double our research budget during that time. And that was just as it was running out, and we thought we were going to have to close the foundation and so on. That was when the wonderful Michael Greaves came along, and also Jim Mellon and one or two others, but Michael was the one who gave the most to allow us to proceed in the same manner. Now we've only got 5 minutes left.
Aubrey, what should people take away from our conversation?
Well, I hope that people will take away the fact that we really are getting close to the development of therapies that will allow people not to get sick when they get old. That's what it's all about. Of course, I do a lot of interviews and a lot of lectures, so I would very much encourage people to look more at other things that we did not have time to cover today. Also, of course, I wrote a book 15 years ago, Ending Aging, which is still the place to start if you want to understand the science of how we're going to develop rejuvenation technologies. And I very much encourage people to pay more attention to this and to keep up with all the news that's coming out, not only from LEV Foundation, but from elsewhere. And furthermore, of course, to support this work and contribute in whatever way you can. Of course, one can contribute financially, one can contribute by outreach, just as you're doing right now by interviewing me. One can also
Yeah.
contribute by doing the science. If you're a scientist and you're deciding what field to go into, pick a field that will impact the aging crusade.
Aubrey, as usual, powerful. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.